The phone buzzed against the mahogany desk for the third time in 10 minutes. Marcus Sterling didn't look up from his laptop screen, where numbers danced in endless columns of quarterly reports, merger projections, stock prices that could make or break entire companies with a single fluctuation. At 34, he had built an empire that most people could only dream of, but lately, the penthouse office felt more like a prison made of glass and steel, 40 floors above a world he'd forgotten how to live in. "Sir?" His assistant knocked gently on the door. "Your mother called again about the charity gala. She said you promised to attend, and she's insistent about the blind date arrangement." Marcus finally looked up, his steel gray eyes reflecting the city lights that twinkled below. 3 years. It had been 3 years since Sarah's funeral, 3 years since he'd sealed his heart away like a business contract filed in a vault. His mother, bless her relentless heart, had been orchestrating these chance encounters for months now, each one more transparent than the last. "Tell her I'll think about it," he said, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew he wouldn't. How could he explain to someone who still believed in fairy tales that some stories don't get happy endings? Across town, in a cramped apartment where toys scattered the living room like colorful landmines, Emma Rodriguez was having her own conversation about blind dates. Her sister Maria paced back and forth, gesturing wildly with a wooden spoon still dripping with marinara sauce. You haven't been on a date since?" "Well, since before Lily was born." "That's 4 years. 4 years of nothing but work, kids, and Netflix reruns of Friends." Emma looked up from where she sat cross-legged on the floor, helping her 6-year-old son Danny with his math homework while 4-year-old Lily practiced her alphabet nearby. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes, not from makeup she couldn't afford, but from the kind of exhaustion that comes from working double shifts at the diner while putting herself through nursing school online. "Maria, look at my life," Emma said, spreading her arms to encompass the chaos around them. "What man wants to deal with all this?" "Danny still has nightmares about his father leaving. Lily asks why other kids have daddies and she doesn't. I can barely keep my head above water as it is." "That's exactly why you need this," Maria said, kneeling down beside her sister. "You're an amazing mother, Em. You work harder than anyone I know. You deserve someone who sees that, who sees you." She paused, her voice softening. "Besides, it's just dinner. One dinner. What's the worst that could happen?" "The worst that could happen," Emma thought 2 days later as she stood outside Romano's Italian restaurant, was that she would completely embarrass herself in front of a stranger her sister's friend had set her up with. She'd managed to scrape together enough for a babysitter and had borrowed Maria's black dress, as the only one that didn't have finger paint stains or small tears from tiny hands. Her palms were sweating despite the cool evening air. Inside, Marcus sat at a corner table, checking his watch for the 5th time. He'd almost canceled 3 times, but something, and maybe the memory of Sarah's voice telling him he couldn't hide forever, had kept him from backing out. When he saw a woman approaching hesitantly, scanning the restaurant with nervous eyes, something in his chest tightened unexpectedly. Emma was nothing like the women he was used to meeting. There was no designer dress, no practiced smile, no calculated charm. Instead, there was something real about her, the way she tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, the genuine apology in her voice when she explained she was running 5 minutes late because the babysitter had been delayed. "I'm sorry," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I hope you weren't waiting long. My daughter decided she absolutely had to show me her drawing of a purple elephant right as I was walking out the door." Marcus had been prepared for small talk about career goals and travel destinations. He wasn't prepared for the way her face lit up when she mentioned her daughter, or the way something warm and long forgotten stirred in his chest. "You have children?" he asked, and immediately wondered if he'd somehow missed that detail in whatever brief description his mother had given him about tonight's mystery woman. Emma's smile faltered slightly. This was usually where the evening ended, polite excuses about early meetings and sudden remembrances of prior obligations. "2, she said quietly. "Danny's 6, and Lily just turned 4. If you'd rather not tell me about them," Marcus said instead, surprising them both. And so she did. She told him how Danny was obsessed with dinosaurs and could recite facts about velociraptors that would put museum curators to shame, how Lily insisted on wearing her tutu to grocery shopping because princesses need to look pretty when they buy milk, how Danny protected his little sister fiercely, even though she was the braver of the two, how they both helped make dinner every night, standing on step stools in their tiny kitchen, flour in their hair and tomato sauce on their clothes. Marcus found himself leaning forward, genuinely captivated. When was the last time someone had talked to him about something other than profit margins and market strategies? When had he last seen someone's eyes light up with pure, uncomplicated love? "What about you?" Emma asked eventually, embarrassed by how much she'd been talking. "Maria said you work in business?" Marcus almost laughed. Business, as if Sterling Enterprise SA with its real estate holdings, tech investments, and charitable foundations could be summed up so simply. But looking at Emma, seeing the genuine interest in her eyes rather than the calculating gleam he was used to, he found himself talking about things he'd forgotten he cared about. The scholarship program his company funded for underprivileged kids, the affordable housing project that had started as a tax write-off but had become something he was genuinely proud of. He didn't mention the private jets or the houses scattered across 3 continents. He didn't talk about the net worth that could fund small countries. Instead, he talked about the satisfaction of seeing a kid from the project's graduate college, or the way it felt to hand keys to a family moving into their first real home. Hours passed without either of them noticing. When Emma's phone buzzed with a text from the babysitter, reality came crashing back. "I have to go," she said, checking the time with dismay. "Mrs. Patterson charges extra after 10, and she stopped, realizing how that sounded. "Let me drive you home," Marcus offered. Emma looked out the window at the sleek black Tesla parked at the crib of the kind of car she'd only seen in magazines and shook her head. "That's okay, I can take the bus." "At this hour? Please, I insist." The ride to Emma's neighborhood was quiet, both of them lost in thought. When Marcus pulled up to the modest apartment complex, Emma hesitated before getting out. "Thank you," she said. "For dinner, for listening, for not running when I mentioned the kids." "Thank you," Marcus replied, and meant it. "For reminding me what really matters." He watched her walk up the stairs to her apartment, noting how she paused to pick up a child's toy left on the landing, how she waved at an elderly neighbor peering through curtains. This was a world he'd forgotten existed, a one where people looked out for each other, where community meant more than networking opportunities. Over the next few weeks, Marcus found himself thinking about Emma more than he cared to admit. He'd sent flowers with a note asking for a second date, but she'd called to decline politely. She was too busy with work and school, she'd explained. It wouldn't be fair to him. But Marcus Sterling hadn't built an empire by accepting rejection. He began showing up at the diner where Emma worked, ordering coffee and pie while pretending to read financial reports. At first, Emma was flustered, then annoyed, then finally amused by his persistence. "You know there are better places to conduct business than a greasy spoon diner," she said one afternoon, refilling his coffee cup for the 3rd time. "Better coffee?" he asked with a smile that was becoming increasingly familiar. "Definitely better coffee, but not better company." It was cheesy, Emma thought, but the way he said idle without the practiced smoothness she might have expected made her heart skip in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Their second date was at a children's museum. Marcus had suggested it, thinking it might be easier if Emma could bring Danny and Lily along. He watched in amazement as Danny dragged him to the dinosaur exhibit, chattering excitedly about T-Rex teeth and fossilization processes. Lily appointed herself his tour guide, her small hand slipping trustingly into his as she showed him the butterfly garden. "They like you," Emma said later, as they sat in the museum cafe copyright watching the children play in the adjacent playground. "I like them too," Marcus admitted, and was surprised to realize how much he meant it. When was the last time he'd spent an afternoon doing something just for the joy of it? But it was the phone call that changed everything. Emma had been working a double shift when Danny's teacher called. Her son had collapsed during recess, a seizure that had terrified his classmates and teachers alike. By the time Emma reached the hospital, Danny was stable but scared, and the tests were just beginning. She called Marcus without thinking, her hand shaking as she dialed his number. He arrived within minutes, still in his business suit but with his sleeves rolled up and his tie askew. He didn't ask questions or offer empty reassurances. He simply sat with her in the uncomfortable plastic chairs of the pediatric ward and held her hand while they waited. "The insurance," Emma began, then stopped, overwhelmed by the implications of whatever was wrong with her son. "Don't worry about that now," Marcus said quietly. The diagnosis was epilepsy, manageable with medication, but requiring ongoing treatment and monitoring. As the doctor explained treatment options and costs, Emma felt her world shifting beneath her feet. Even with insurance, the expenses would be crushing. She might have to drop out of nursing school, take on more shifts, maybe move somewhere cheaper. "We'll figure it out," Marcus said firmly when the doctor left them alone. Emma looked at him through tears she'd been too proud to shed in front of the medical staff. "If you'll let me." That night, after Danny was discharged with a prescription and a follow-up appointment, Marcus made a phone call. By morning, the medical bills had been quietly transferred to an account that would never send Emma a statement. The specialist appointments were scheduled at the children's hospital where his foundation was a major donor. The medication that might have cost hundreds of dollars a month was suddenly covered by a pharmaceutical assistance program that had mysteriously appeared overnight. Emma wasn't stupid. She knew Marcus was behind the sudden turn of fortune, but when she tried to confront him about it, he simply shrugged. "I have resources," he said. "Danny needs help." "It's not complicated." "It is complicated," Emma insisted. "I can't just let you pay for everything. I have my pride, Marcus, and I have more money than I know what to do with," he replied. "Pride doesn't cure epilepsy, Emma, but money can help manage it." They fought about it, their first real argument. Emma accused him of trying to buy her affection. Marcus accused her of being too stubborn to accept help when her son needed it. They said things they both regretted, and Emma asked him to leave. For 3 weeks, they didn't speak. Marcus threw himself back into work, but the numbers on his screen seemed meaningless now. He'd gotten used to Emma's voice, to Danny's excited chatter about dinosaurs, to Lily's insistence that he read her bedtime stories in funny voices. The penthouse felt more like a tomb than ever. Emma, meanwhile, was drowning. Between work, school, and Danny's medical appointments, she was running on fumes and caffeine. Lily had started asking where Mr. Marcus was, and Danny had taken to drawing pictures of the three of them together, stick figures holding hands under a crayon sun. It was Mrs. Patterson, the elderly babysitter, who finally set Emma straight. "Pride's a luxury, honey," the older woman said one evening as Emma counted out bills for the babysitting fee. "Love ain't. That man loves you and those babies, and you're a fool if you can't see it." "It's not that simple," Emma protested. "It is that simple. You're making it complicated because you're scared." "But let me tell you something I learned in 73 years on this earth. When someone good comes along, you don't push them away because they got more money than you. You hold on tight and thank God for the blessing." The next morning, Emma called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. She dropped the kids off at Maria's house and drove to Sterling Enterprises, her heart pounding as she took the elevator to the 40th floor. Marcus's assistant tried to stop her, but Emma walked past with the determination of a woman who'd finally figured out what she wanted. She found Marcus in his office, staring out at the city with hollow eyes that lit up the moment he saw her. "Emma, is everything okay? Is Dania?" She crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed him, cutting off his worried questions with her lips. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry for being proud and stubborn and scared. Mrs. Patterson called me a fool, and she was right." "You're not a fool," Marcus said, his arms tightening around her. "You're the strongest person I know. You're an amazing mother. You're working 2 jobs while going to school. He stopped, shaking his head. "You're everything I didn't know I was looking for." "I love you," Emma said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I love you, and that terrifies me because I've never had anything good in my life that didn't get taken away." "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus promised. "Not unless you want me to." "I don't want you to go anywhere. Danny asks about you every day. Lily made you a drawing that she keeps forgetting to give you, and she took a shaky breath. I want to build something with you, not because you can solve our problems with money, but because you see us. You see me, you see my kids as more than just complications in your life." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away tears. She didn't realize she was crying. "They're not complications, Emma. They're the best parts of you. Danny's brilliant and brave, and Lily has enough personality for 10 people. They're not obstacles to loving you, they're reasons to love you more." 6 months later, Marcus proposed in the Children's Museum where they'd had their second date. Danny helped him pick out the ring, a simple solitaire that Emma could wear while working without catching on her uniform or gloves. Lily was in charge of holding the flowers, though she kept stopping to smell them every few steps. The wedding was small, held in the community center where Emma had volunteered before nursing school consumed her time. Marcus's mother, initially shocked by the idea of her billionaire son marrying a waitress with 2 children, had become Emma's fiercest champion after meeting Danny and Lily. She'd appointed herself the official grandmother and took her duties very seriously. Marcus didn't just marry Emma, he adopted Danny and Lily, giving them his name and his promise to be the father they'd never had. When Danny asked if this meant Marcus would always be there for soccer games and science projects, Marcus knelt down to his son's level. "Always," he promised. "Even when you're too old to want me there, I'll still show up." "Even for the boring stuff?" Lily asked, climbing onto Marcus's lap. "Especially for the boring stuff," Marcus laughed. "That's what dads do." The Sterling family moved to a house with a big backyard and a tire swing, close enough to Emma's old neighborhood that she could still help Mrs. Patterson with her groceries and Danny could still see his friends from school. Marcus learned to make pancakes in dinosaur shapes and to braid hair for dance recitals. Emma finished nursing school and got a job at the Children's Hospital, working with families just like hers used to be. On quiet Sunday mornings, when Danny was reading in the window seat and Lily was teaching her dolls to make pretend pancakes, Marcus would watch his wife grading papers at the kitchen table and marvel at the turns life could take. He'd built his fortune thinking that success was measured in dollars and acquisitions, but Emma had taught him that the richest life was one filled with ordinary moments made extraordinary by love. "Whatcha thinking about?" Emma asked one such morning, looking up from her stack of papers to find Marcus watching her with that soft smile she'd grown to love. "Just thinking about blind dates," Marcus said, pulling her into his arms, "and how sometimes the best things come disguised as the scariest." "Are you saying I was scary?" Emma laughed. "Terrifying," Marcus confirmed, kissing her forehead. "You made me want things I'd forgotten I could have. A family, a home, Sunday morning pancakes." He paused, listening to their children's laughter drifting from the living room. "A future worth building." Emma stood on her tiptoes to kiss him properly, tasting coffee and contentment on his lips. Outside, the city hummed with the ambitions and dreams of millions of people, but inside their kitchen, with flour on the counters and children's artwork on the refrigerator, they had already found everything they'd been searching for. Love, as it turned out, had nothing to do with bank accounts or perfect timing. It had everything to do with showing up, day after day, for the small moments that built a life together, and in the end, that was worth more than all the money in the world.